Welcome to Marvel Us Disney, the podcast that discusses the most recent doings at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. My co-host, the amazing Aaron Adams, and I are recording this on Monday, January 6, 2020. By the way, happy belated New Year's, Aaron. Here's hoping you and Sabrina did something fun on December 31st.
Yeah, passed out at 9:30. That was awesome. Had the best sleep ever.
And there's a part of me that's really happy to hear that because Nancy made it as far as 10:30 and I hung in there till 11, but that was mostly because I always call my daughter at 11 o'clock, 8 o'clock LA time. But in our case, the most exciting thing all evening was that there was this ice storm supposedly coming that was going to knock out power here up in New Hampshire. So while other people were waiting to watch the ball drop, we were filling up the bathtub, so if we lost power, we'd be able to flush toilets. We're exciting people. Anyway, so lots has gone on since we last recorded a new Mud podcast, and I guess the appropriate place to start is, did you hear about what Martin Scorsese's 20-year-old daughter Francesca did to her dad over the holiday?
I don't know, but this Martin Scorsese thing, I've seen vampires die with less effort than the Martin Scorsese story. But go ahead. I'm going to go look for a stake to put through the heart of this thing. But what did she do?
It's actually nice at this point.
Okay.
To start to point out that people involved do have senses of humor. So what Francesca, who's again, Martin's 20-year-old daughter, decided to do is she took all of the presents she bought her dad for this year's Christmas and wrapped them in Marvel wrapping paper.
She should have bought the whole Infinity Saga box set that they were selling for $500 and gave it to him. That'd be so troll, she'd be recast in Lord of the Rings.
Wow. No, that's funny. That's funny. But she literally tweeted out the image of the pile of packages with their, with the Hulk prominently displayed. So it was kind of cool. And
that's cool.
And just last night, in fact, Ricky Gervais, who was this year's host of the Golden Globes, also brought up the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They aren't really, it isn't cinema, they're theme park attractions. And so Gervais on stage actually said this, about, and to set up the gag, you have to understand that Martin Scorsese's kind of a short guy. He's 5'4". And so, again, Gervais says, Martin Scorsese, the greatest living director, made news with his comments about Marvel. And he said, I agree. But that said, I don't understand what Martin is doing hanging around theme parks. He's not big enough to go on any of the rides. And the nice thing is they actually cut away to the table where Scorsese and Robert De Niro are sitting. Those of you who are good at Liberty, you can actually see the two of them cracking up and Scorsese turning to De Niro and going, it's true, it's true. And speaking of which, since we're talking about Marvel and theme parks, while we were away, Disney Parks finally revealed the official name of that Marvel-themed land that they're building at California Adventure. And this 5-acre expansion of that theme park is going to be called the Avengers Campus. We've talked before about Phase 1 opening with that Spider-Man attraction. I explained about that previously, right? About the how you're going to actually be able to thwip on this ride.
I've got a different question, though, and I don't want to derail the conversation, but we were watching on the Disney Plus. Did you see the clip of the, what do you call the figures, the animatronics?
Audio animatronics, yes.
Okay. So this one is not one that's got piping going under the floorboards of a stage. Mm-hmm. They launch it into the air and it poses, and it looked very Spider-Man-esque. They didn't show it in a Spider-Man suit, but it looked exactly like a Spider-Man pose. And then I saw it was like a little video animation of what the Avengers Campus would be, and they launch a Spider-Man into it's like behind the little building viewpoint. They've got a catapult, and it launches a little Spidey mannequin into the air, and as he's about to hit like the peak, he does a Spidey pose, and then as he comes down on the other side, they just kind of catch him in a big net that you can't see in the background. And I think that's the coolest thing ever, just to have a Spidey mannequin that poses at the top of its apex and just looks awesome. I want to see that so bad.
Well, then you and I have to make plans to be out in California for the summer of 2021, unfortunately. Remember, the Spider-Man thing is phase one. That opens this summer, whereas the Quinjet adventure and supposedly the very effect you're talking about will be incorporated into the 5-acre campus out there. But again, phase two. So,
All right.
but good things come to those who wait.
Well, I didn't know if that was going to be tied into the Spidey ride or the attraction that you're talking about, or if it was just the general. I know Walt loved things moving. He liked motion happening in his parks, and I think that could be just that element.
Oh, no.
Or
You're
is
not
that part of
wrong.
the show building?
You've nailed it, actually. That's all about a kinetic. I mean, literally, the idea is that, how in all the Spider-Man games or the movies, you have that scene where he's soaring through the canyons of Manhattan and you watch people who sort of whip their heads around it. I just see that, and evidently, this is Disney's answer to the dragon in Diagon Alley at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios Florida. The notion is that you'll just be in there. You'll be walking through the Avengers campus, and then suddenly over your head, Spidey will leap through the air, and again, strike the signature pose, and then just fall out of sight behind a building. And you'll be like, did you see that? And it's like, well, no, I was face down on the map. I was trying to find the bathroom. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But again, you then have to wait for them to fish the figure out of the net, carry it back to the
over
catapult
to the other
mechanism.
side. Well, you'd think they would just put a catapult on each side and a net on each side and kind of just slingshot them back and forth. I think would be the easiest way to get them from point A to point B if that's the mechanic. But I was thinking, it looks cool and everything, but
I just have to interrupt here for a second.
Yeah.
Again, gentlemen at Imagineering, the check for this idea would go to Aaron Adams.
Oh, geez, if they haven't thought of that idea by now, they don't deserve to work there. Moving on.
Okay.
Come on.
Well, again, we were talking about future attractions, and we have the Disney's Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel at the Disneyland Paris Resort, which has been going through a lengthy rehab to bring in all of these amazing Marvel-themed elements. Well, they're taking reservations now, folks, for bookings at this hotel, which evidently is reopening on June 15th. And if you book a package between June 15th and December 4th of 2020, you will get, as part of your arrival packet, this limited edition litho by Matt Ferguson, who's best known as an art director and poster designer for Disney, Marvel, and Lucasfilm. And I'm just told that the only way you can get this art, which supposedly shows an amazing assembly of the Avengers out in front of this impossibly high skyscraper in Manhattan, is you have to stay at that hotel. And what else? Oh, work is proceeding on the retheming of Rock and Roller Coaster at the Disneyland Paris version. That went down in September of last year and will come back soon as a high-speed, hyperkinetic Iron Man attraction. Likewise, on Monday of this week, the tram tour at the Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris closed. And that area will mostly be used for their version of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but their own version of the Avengers Campus shows will start coming online in 2020 and 2021. And I'm hoping that some of our listeners in France will reach out and let us know what they think of those attractions. And
question for you about the Iron Man and Rock and Roller Coaster conversion.
Yep.
I mean, Tony liked rock and roll. Are they keeping the rock and roll music and then just kind of changing the theming around the coaster, giving it a red and gold paint job? How does it get converted? Do you have any info on that?
Well, they did put one piece of concept art out there, and the pre-show area actually showed Tony in his Iron Man outfit in front of one of the giant arc reactors. Evidently, the idea is you are at Stark Laboratories, and Tony is showing off new tech. And again, in the fine Disney tradition, I'm betting something goes horribly wrong.
Right.
But yeah, the track remains in place. And you're right. Tony given the music that he used to work to in his home lab, I would honestly be surprised if it doesn't have a kickin' soundtrack.
Yeah, I just figured it seemed rock and roller coaster and then Tony Stark, and I'm like, that's not very much of a leap from A to B. All you got to do is paint it red and gold, give it some theming in the Q area, and you're done.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Okay, moving on.
Okay. Anyway, you and I have talked previously about Deadpool 3, and obviously you have some concerns. But on December 24th, Ryan Reynolds put in an appearance on the Christmas edition of Live with Kelly and Ryan. And he was supposedly there hyping his new Netflix movie, Six Underground. But over the course of this interview, Ryan was asked by the other Ryan Seacrest, about Deadpool 3. And Ryan volunteered, working on it right now with the whole team. We're over at Marvel now, which is kind of the big leagues all of a sudden. It's kind of crazy. And again, as part of this discussion, which, by the way, Reynolds was, in addition to Kelly and Seacrest, they were all there on camera in their pajamas. So, which I guess isn't that much of a leap from the Deadpool outfit. But there was no discussion as to whether or not this is going to be an R-rated film.
You would think that they would continue the trend. It made its money. It's done its thing. I mean, they've got a formula that works for it. Now it's what story do you tell within the confines of that formula, or how do you kind of shake up the formula to make it more interesting?
I agree. Oh, and by the way, I want to say, I don't think it was the last Mud, but I think it was maybe the one before that. You introduced a new segment, the stuff that Kevin says.
Oh, yeah.
I found Kevin said some stuff over the 2 weeks that we were away that I wanted to get your thoughts on. And both of these things were said during a question and answer session that Kevin recently took part in at the New York Film Academy. And first up, Kevin was asked about when the Marvel Cinematic Universe would start including characters that were transgender. And Feige's response was that this would be happening, and again, direct quote here, very soon in a film we're filming right now, which, of course, the internet immediately, went, oh, well, he must be talking about the Eternals, and that makes sense because, back at the D23 Expo in August, Feige stood on stage, and as he was talking about this Chloe Zhao movie, he mentioned that, that we're going to have in this movie the first openly gay character to appear in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. And that, this is, the gay character is going to be in the Eternals. And again, quoting directly from Kevin, the character is going to be married. He's got a family. And this is just part of who he is. So the thinking was, well, okay, so if the Eternals has got the first openly gay character, it would just stand to reason that, okay, then this film must then also have the MCU's first transgender character. But by this past weekend, and what was kind of interesting is, while Feige himself didn't retract the statement, Variety reported that two senior officials at Marvel Studios said that Kevin Feige is now walking back the comments that he made at the New York Film Academy, and that what Kevin meant to say was that the Eternals would feature the MCU's first LGBT character, not specifically the MCU's first transgender character. So what's the old cliche, Aaron? You got to walk before you can run,
Not necessarily. I mean,
okay.
It's a matter of inclusion.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. So the fact, and if we're proper allies, then we support inclusion of any form. And it doesn't mean that you've got to have the entire rainbow in one movie. But as long as you're plopping in different colors of the rainbow, that's fine. That's the whole point of inclusion, is it doesn't all have to be at once. It doesn't have to be an everything right now type of thing. It just has to be continuous. It can't be like a moment where we go, hey, we did it once, and then they're done, right? Yeah. They have to continue. That's the whole point of change. Is it's not doing something once and then never going back to it. It's continuing what you've done the one time and doing it a second time, doing it a third time. So we need to start, right? So let's start with one, and then after one is done, let's work on two, and then after two, we'll work on 3 and 4.
That said, I am kind of hoping that again, we're talking about the first openly gay character in the MCU. I'm kind of hoping this is not a rerun of what just happened with the rise of Skywalker, that they made such a big deal about, you're going to see
Two
the
people
first
kissing in the background.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
literally it was such a short scene that Singapore, which really has an issue with depiction of homosexuality on screen, that they insisted that in order for it to maintain a certain rating in that market, that scene had to be cut. I guess I want this to be, something, but especially if you're talking this much about it out ahead of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, like, the question that was posed originally was transgender, and transgender does not equate to gay, necessarily. They could go hand in hand, but it doesn't, by definition, mean that they have to. So the language is being very specific. When you talk about LGBTQ, if you're using that as an umbrella term. If you're talking about transgender, that means going from one sex to another. If you're talking about gay, that's about who you have sex with. So, I mean, that's if we have to look at the definitions of the words. And then if Kevin said something, we have to understand that not everybody is aware of all of the definitions in the dictionary yet. So he's going to say something, and it's going to be, he's going to be committed to a thing that other people understand the definition to that he may not. And then all of a sudden they go, hey, we asked for transgender, you said gay. Those are different things. And he's going to have to go, whoa. I need a dictionary. What did I commit to? Right.
Yeah. And again, that's the thing. I again, as a 60-year-old man, my daughter is constantly correcting me. And I mean, well, but it's just, the whole they, them issue when you're dealing transgender. And it's just sort of like, and it's something I have to learn how to do. It's not their fault. It's my fault. That this is how I grew up, and I have to grow and change.
Well, let's think of it this way. It's not your fault, Jim. It's that the world changes, and you are either with the change or you are so against it. But in the old-timey English, we don't say thou'st or thou anymore, right?
This is true.
Changes. So we adapt and we grow as a civilization with these changes.
Oh, I love that analogy. Okay, cool. Well, and now speaking of other things that Kevin had to walk back, remember we talked previously about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and how this was going to be the very first MCU horror film, which obviously excited the two of us, and we were talking about the possibilities of, folding in the Marvel zombies, and sadly, Kevin's walking that one back too. This is a direct quote from him again at the New York Film Academy, and he said, look, I wouldn't necessarily say that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is a horror film, but it is, as Scott Derrickson, our director, pitched it, a big MCU film with scary sequences in it. And Feige goes on to explain, when I was a kid in the 80s, Spielberg did an amazing job of doing that. There were horrifying sequences in Raiders of the Lost Ark where I, as a little kid, covered my eyes when the Nazis' faces melted, or in Temple of Doom, or Gremlins, or Poltergeist. And these were the movies that the PG-13 rating was invented for, by the way. They were PG, and the MPA was like, we need another rating. But that's fun. It's fun to be scared in that way, and not in a horrific, torturous way, but in a way that's legitimately scary, because Scott Derrickson is quite good at that, scary in the service of an exhilarating emotion. Though, as we talk of Multiverse of Madness, and in fact, I want to say on a recent show, you and I really talked at length about how WandaVision was supposed to run. In fact, there was this deliberate plan that WandaVision was supposed to run in the late winter, early spring of 2021, and that it would literally set the stage for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which, again, had a May 7th, 2021 release date. Well, that all seemed to go out the window this past week.
And yet we were so convinced that they were lock tooth like gears. They couldn't be separated. So,
well, all right. Just to explain here, folks, that there was a trailer for Disney Plus that debuted online just this past week that laid out everything that they were going to be showing on Disney's new subscription streaming service in 2020. And among the images that were included was a shot from WandaVision. So it's like, well, wait a minute. If it's debuting in 2020, how do the gears mesh in that way? And so I called a friend at Marvel and asked for an explanation. And it turns out We're still right, Aaron.
Huh?
But here, have my pal walk me through the entire programming thing that Disney Plus is about to do. Okay, it actually starts mid-September 2020. The 6-episode run of Falcon and the Winter Soldier begins on Disney Plus, with the final episode, which airs just before Halloween, helping to set up the Eternals. Now, November 6, 2020, the Eternals opens in theaters. Less than 1 week later, on November 12th, 2020, which, by the way, is the 1-year anniversary of the launch of Disney+, the first episode of the second season of The Mandalorian airs. This will be a Thursday, by the way. The following week, The Mandalorian will switch back to its normal every Friday air date, and just like the first season of The Mandalorian, they're going to do 8 episodes.
Well, let me go jump in my cryo chamber real quick and set the date for November 12th. See you in a year, Jim.
I have to admit, I am very much looking forward to more episodes of that show. I really enjoyed it.
Right.
And remember, they said that WandaVision would be airing in 2020. Well, sure enough, on December 31st, 2020, the first episode of WandaVision debuts on Disney+. Again, that's going to be a Thursday. And then the following week, on Friday, episode 2 will air, and it's a 6-episode run. And evidently, this is something that Marvel's going to announce later this year. And in fact, it explained Scott Derrickson's tweet back on December 15th about, what was it again? Release dates of the Enemy of Art?
Yeah, something very, very similar to them words.
Okay. So remember, the schedule as it's out there right now has Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings opening in theaters on February 12th, 2021, and then Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness opening in theaters on May 7th of that year. And evidently, what's in the works and has not been announced is that those two films are swapping release dates. So, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness drops on February 12th. So again, we get our interlocking mechanism of WandaVision, with the 6 episodes starting on New Year's Day, with it completing just before Doctor Strange opens in theaters. And then Shang-Chi, they're kind of doing the same thing they did with Black Panther 2. Remember how the original Black Panther played in February, and February of 2018, right?
Right.
But when they went to do the second Black Panther, they moved it to the May slot because they thought it's going to really play strong. And evidently, based on everything so far that they've lined up for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, they feel like this is potentially a real summer blockbuster. And remember that in Marvel's eyes, the summer blockbuster season actually starts in the first week of May. So it's like, no disrespect to Doctor Strange, but it just also the fact that they can do WandaVision is launch it as part of this this sort of programming event that goes Falcon and the Winter Soldier, then season 2 of The Mandalorian, then into WandaVision.
Before you go on, I just wonder if Disney is testing the idea of breaking the concept of the movie calendar. If you put out WandaVision for 6 weeks and you lead to, let's just say, for example, a cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. Not saying it's going to happen that way, but what if it did? Mm-hmm. And then they go, by the way, Doctor Strange is out in 3, 2, 1. And people go rush out and they want to see how WandaVision wraps up in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Like, they've got data. There could be some sort of thing that they're trying out that's all about numbers and dollars and how the calendar works in a movie theater that may just change how it all works for them.
We're suddenly going back to stuff that Kevin said. Remember how Kevin was talking about that going forward, that in order to really be up to speed about what was going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you had to watch the Marvel limited series that were going to be shown on Disney+.
It's like a 6-hour commercial for your movie.
I honestly think, for example, looking at The Mandalorian, I am on the back of how much I enjoyed those 8 episodes. I feel like I'm that much more likely to go out and see Rise of Skywalker, especially given how terrible the reviews were. Sort of like, but I like The Mandalorian, so I'll go check this out. Anyway, to sort of pivot back to the year that Disney just had theatrically. You were talking about theatrical releases. Disney had a once-in-a-lifetime year in 2019. They had 7 films that made $1 billion worldwide. They ended the year with an 11.12 billion in global earnings. That's like having a unicorn during an eclipse. All right, that's never going to happen again. And Disney knows that. Especially looking at the what's going on theatrically. And so they are literally pivoting to the streaming service. This is all about meeting their announced goal, which, remember, back in November when they launched Disney Plus, they wanted to have 60 to 90 million subscribers by 2024. So that was their 5-year goal. And now, just yesterday, CNN reported that Rosenblatt Securities analyst Bernie McIntern, he has access to the numbers that the general public don't have access to. But evidently, according to Bernie, Disney is already halfway to the $60 million goal, that when Disney announces its first quarter earnings for 2020, which it'll do in the first week of February, they're going to reveal that they've already got 25 million people signed up for Disney Plus. And they had all of those people by December 29th, 2019, which is, again, the way Disney's fiscal calendar works. That was the end of the first quarter for 2020. So, the very thing that we were talking about here, Ryan, about creating a programming event going from, Falcon and the Winter Soldier to second season of The Mandalorian to WandaVision, and again, interlocking with these films.
As you're talking about this, I'm like seeing other visions of sugar plums in my head that we're not talking about yet. Think of anything big in the streaming world. Can you give me just any one title that's not Mandalorian right now? Just anything random.
Just this past summer, we had the 3rd season of Stranger Things. Though
there you go. Exactly. Okay, Stranger Things. How long did we talk about Stranger Things? I mean, a week after it was released. It lived in the public eye for like a couple of weeks, a month.
Yep.
Mandalorian, because it's stretched out. Like episode 1 gave you a hint of. We still call it Baby Yoda, but, it's not Baby Yoda. It's the asset or the child.
By the way, just today, Taika Waititi tweeted, folks who work on the show know the real name of Baby Yoda. And he says, I'm not going to release it, but I'll leave that to Favreau. But evidently, this thing really does have a name.
And that's cool. I can't wait to find out. But it's like in episode 1, we got our first glimpse of it, and everybody went, aw, and it was a meme. And then in 2, he did a little thing, and everybody went, aw, and it was a different meme. And then in episode 3, different thing, different meme. Episode 4, I mean, every single week, there was a new asset meme. And that kept it in the public eye for almost 2 months because Disney was releasing episode by episode instead of just dropping an entire batch all at once.
Yep.
So Stranger Things was great and everything, but it was like a big bang with a really, really short fuse. And Mandalorian is a hell of a long fuse with a tremendous bang at the end because we are not going to talk spoilers about it, but the last 30 seconds means I am there definitely for the first frame of season 2 when that happens. I'm so there for that.
You and me both.
Right? So, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I think when we get to WandaVision and it's a weekly conversation that people are going to be having episode by episode instead of like a Stranger Things 3 info dump where it's like, oh my God, the whole season distilled in this one blog. And then I'm done with it because I consumed it at once. I'm going to talk about it at once, and then I'm done. And I think this is the way that Disney Plus is going to stand out with kind of making its own advertising. It's got word of mouth because people are talking about it for weeks on end.
You got to wonder on the Netflix side of the fence, especially given that they have okayed production of season 4 of Stranger Things, and given what just happened with The Mandalorian, how the child became, as you mentioned, a meme phenomenon that's white hot pop culture thing.
if something big like Stranger Things season 4 comes out and they end up deciding to release it week by week, there's a shift in the tide. If they are dropping, if they're making like Amazon's got the Lord of the Rings thing coming out, they spend $1 billion on, do you think they're going to drop that all at once, or you think they're going to tease that out week by week? They're going to tease that out week by week.
They gotta.
Yeah. So I think there's a trend that's going to shift back, and streaming is still growing and finding its way.
But at the same time, it's always interesting to be there at the moment where things change. And I think you're right. I think that Mandalorian really sort of planted a flag. And, what's kind of funny is that there are all these stories about how Kevin Feige is working on a Star Wars movie to sort of help right the ship there. And the irony is, well, here's the Mandalorian that is now kind of dictating how we're going to see Falcon and the Winter Soldier and how we're going to see WandaVision, largely because the Mandalorian became such a phenomenon because it was released, one every week or thereabouts. And
right.
By the way, speaking of release dates, again, we were talking a little bit back there about New Mutants, and a brand new trailer for that film dropped today. And tell you what, when we get back from this commercial break, Aaron and I will talk about the 20th Century Fox release that, man, how many release dates has this movie had?
3 or 4?
And we'll get to that right after this commercial break.
Oh, the sick day struggle is real. But with Dimetapp, it doesn't have to be. Children's Dimetapp works quickly to soothe multiple bothersome cough, cold, and allergy symptoms in a single dose. Our fast-acting formulas are designed with kids in mind, so they get everything they need and nothing they don't. Available in liquid and on-the-go chewable tablets. Tap the banner now to shop at Amazon and say goodbye to the sick day struggle with Dimetapp. Use as directed.
A message from McAfee. Wondering why the post office is texting you or why you owe thousands of dollars in toll fees? Because someone's trying to scam you. The good news? McAfee can help. With McAfee's award-winning scam detection, it's easy to tell what's real and what's fake over text, in your inbox, and online. If they're
You want a free gift?
Seriously? If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
To be fair, you and I have talked previously about what's going on with the New Mutants, and I think, by the way, you got to see the new trailer today, right? Or
yeah, and I had to scan the comments section because I was mostly curious as to what the general world at large was thinking about this now. And then I looked at all the comments, and there was a wide variety of people going from, finally, this is being released, to, oh, wow, this totally brand new idea looks totally dope. I'm so excited for this brand new thing that was just created just now. And there were other people that were confused by the horror aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And then there were other people that were totally on board with this radically new, inventive idea that someone just came up with just now. I don't know if it's just the fact that enough time has passed that a lot of people just forgot this existed, or if it never made a blip on the general radar when first trailers came out, a couple of years ago. But yeah, some people just had no idea this was a thing. And I got to say, no matter how this plays out, there are a lot of comments where I saw that there are true fans of characters who are just excited to see their favorite character on screen for the first time. And I just want this to be a good movie experience for them. That's all I care about is, like, back in 2002 when I got to see Spidey for the first time, I had a blast. So for the people that love the characters, genuinely, I want them to enjoy it no matter how it plays out.
I liked this trailer. It has that definite horror movie teens battle adults who are lying to them vibe, and so it looks like a fun time at the movies. Though this project has had a somewhat troubled production history. Though the interesting thing is, again, reached out to a friend at Fox out ahead of Aaron and I doing this podcast, and he gave me a very different history of this film than the one that you and I have previously shared, Aaron. And first and foremost, the impetus of this project came largely on the back that the X-Men movies had gotten so expensive that they were looking to do a reboot, especially with younger actors that cost less to I mean, first of all, you could sign them to a contract for multiple films. And by the way, the New Mutants, at least according to the original plan that Josh Boone laid out to Fox, was a sort of a trilogy. And this was as far back as May of 2015 when he submitted his screenplay with Nate Lee. And so what Fox wanted to do was get young actors. If we were talking about hot pop culture phenomena last year, that would have been Game of Thrones, which was, had just ended its final season on HBO. And Maisie Williams, who plays Arya Starks on that show, was actually cast in the New Mutants, which with the notion of HBO was going to end Game of Thrones in 2018. So the notion is, okay, we cast her, and then we shoot the film in 2017. And then they edit the thing together. They have it ready to release to theaters for April of 2018, which coincidentally would be right as HBO is ending Game of Thrones. And so Maisie is going to, a big chunk of that show. And so it's like a wonderful Venn diagram that Game of Thrones fans who love Maisie would come out to see New Mutants. And the month before they start shooting, HBO announces in June of 2017, we've got a production problem, so we're pushing off the series finale for Game of Thrones from 2018 to 2019. So right off the bat, Fox's plan goes straight into the ditch. And then in December of 2017, the Walt Disney Company announces that it's looking to acquire 21st Century Fox and its film and television production studios. And now New Mutants is supposed to be a trilogy. It's supposed to relaunch the X-Men franchise for Fox. And now it's like, well, if Disney acquires Fox, obviously Kevin Feige and the folks at Marvel Studios are going to be talking about what they want to do with the X-Men. So what's the point of doing this first film of a brand new trilogy? So to give them some breathing space, Fox decides in January of 2018, they're going to push off the release date of New Mutants from April. So again, 3 months before this movie was originally supposed to arrive in theaters, it's now pushed off to February of 2019 with the hope that, accordingly, that initially, the hope was that Disney would be able to get through all the regulatory hurdles within a year, at the worst, 18 months. But nobody anticipated that in June of 2018, Comcast would suddenly come over the hill and put in its own bid for 21st Century Fox, which again totally screwed up the calendar. So Fox again, with the thought of, all right, let's give ourselves some room here. So they push off the release date yet again to now it's August of 2019, figuring that, well, by then Disney's it's either Disney's acquired Fox, or if they haven't acquired Fox, okay, then we can proceed, pursue our trilogy idea. But Disney acquires Fox for $71.3 billion in March of 2019. And then it's a question of, okay, it's the very first time now that Disney's officially acquired Fox that they can start looking at the films that Fox has got in production and where they fit in with the stuff that Disney's going to try to release. And so May 2019, we're talking, 8 weeks later? This is where Disney, setting up its sort of schedule for the next couple of years, insists that, okay, New Mutants, we're going to push off yet again. Fox had locked in that August 2019 release date. Disney says, nah, we're going to go April 2020. So that's where we are right now. And that's 4 weeks before Black Widow. All of Disney's might and main, at least when it comes to marketing, is going to be put behind Black Widow because that's supposed to be the first film of Phase 4. So I kind of feel bad for Maisie.
It feels an awful lot like a couple of people dumping a carpet that just happens to have a couple of shoes sticking out of the end of it into a river. That's the mental image I've got right now.
Well, all right. To be fair, though, that in Hollywood, January is traditionally the month you dump films that you don't necessarily have much faith in. That's kind of the dumping ground of the year, to the effect of, okay, we burn off the stuff that we don't have any confidence in. So the fact that it has an April release date, at least says that Disney saw something there. But on the other hand, again, this is not going to be a trilogy. This is not going to be a relaunch of the X-Men. This is a one and done. The interesting thing, though, to double back on what we talked about previously, there were all of these stories about how they were going to do reshoots, to the effect of it wasn't scary enough, or, that they wanted to bring in additional characters and they wanted to plus the film. And it turns out all of that, they would never any plans to reshoot. This was always about Fox trying to accommodate Marvel Studios and Disney with the notion of that, do we really want to relaunch the X-Men at a time when Disney is probably looking to relaunch the X-Men, or at least after they complete the acquisition? Which brings me to the final story of the show, doubling back to Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool 3. This is the last little butte that my friend at Fox sort of tossed through the door here, and that he was talking about, Ryan sat down with Kevin Feige, and they definitely, want to do something significant with Deadpool 3 for the, this is the first one that's going to be where he's officially becoming part of the MCU. And the interesting thing is Ryan is evidently pushing that in order to make this film big and important and something that people have to go out of their way to see, he wants Marvel to reach out to Hugh Jackman and have him come back and play Wolverine again. Now, Hugh Jackman has already committed to appearing on Broadway this year. He's appearing in a revival of The Music Man with Sutton Foster that begins performances in New York in September, and then the limited engagement runs through February 28th, 2021. So if Deadpool 3 is going forward, and if, they want to make it must-see, the question is now, do you shoot the Wolverine scenes? First of all, if he even agrees, hasn't Hugh Jackman basically said that I'm done with Wolverine?
It could be Ryan Reynolds just puts on his Deadpool costume, goes to wherever Hugh Jackman is rehearsing his play, busts into the theater. He's like, Hugh, come on, just real quick, and if Hugh says no, Ryan just says to hell with it and throws it in the movie anyway.
Okay.
And he goes, I tried to get it to happen. Here's what happened. He said no. He's a let's move on.
that could well be. But yeah, I guess the question is, do you shoot before? And again, I think as you mentioned, the poor guy's going to be in rehearsals right up until the show opens in September. Or do you wait till the end of February, March, for him to finally be available? Or do you shoot those scenes in New York, when he's not performing in that play? I mean,
if they write whatever gag, it may only require that Hugh Jackman take off his shirt and stand in front of a green screen and say like 3 lines of dialogue. I mean, his cameo in the X-Men First Class was him in a bar, and I believe his only words were F off. And
that's true.
It's like, that's okay, true. We're done, thanks. So.
Don't get me wrong, I love that scene. I really do. It's a fun moment in First Class. But, if Hugh's coming back, especially for a Ryan Reynolds Deadpool movie, I do hope that they do something of size. But I guess long story short, Aaron, between what's going on with WandaVision and likewise, the Deadpool 3, we have a very interesting year ahead of us here with the Marvelous Disney podcast. Lots and lots and lots to talk about. But meantime, folks, if you're waiting for our next show, we do have some other fine podcasts here at Jim Hill Media. We've got Disney Dish with Len Testo. We've got Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. We've got Universal Joint with Justin Fuse. We've got Looking at Lucasfilm with Dan Z. And in fact, to this afternoon, I am recording with Michelle Valladolid a brand new episode of I Want That, our Disney merch podcast. So tell you what, if you could do Anna and I a favor, and if you could head over to iTunes and rate and recommend this show, that does help send additional eyeballs and ears our way. And if you really, really, really like what we do here, if you get head over to Bandcamp and subscribe. Thanks for listening. And on behalf of Mr. Adams, we look forward to you swinging by again and catching another episode of Marvelous Disney.